I don't know if you've saw this before. Code Sandbox. It's just a way so you can do React or any other like front end thing on the cloud, or just like you can do it online. So instead of like using like offline editors and stuff, you can just do React. If you have a MacBook, if you have like an iPad or something, you can just like without installing. So you can use like you can see here. I would say open React, and I will have an editor here.
Currency of this undefined. So this is undefined.
Does it make sense? It is just a small example. Of course. Is it clear this way? No.
Actually, I cannot see anything.
Okay, yeah, just you should say I can see.
And then
I'll just do.
it says 24.
Should I increase it more? Or?
No, I think it's fine.
Are,
For me.
are you sure? All of you?
Yunus, I have one question about.
Of course,
that,
yeah.
last homework.
Shoot, yeah.
We have to make one app,
Yeah.
GitHub user searcher,
Yeah.
and there are too many as he did with submit, and as Benjamin gave with every character whatever we enter, it shows we are seeing here results.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with submit, I tried with submit also, but with on change event, it there is problem like I discussed with him also in the breakfast time.
Yeah.
It's I put it in the update hook, a component did update, and I'm changing this dot set state and mapping over there only. So it sends lots of requests, and then it's
True, because you're using the on change.
Yeah.
But you should not use the on change. If you want to really use the on change, there is some advanced methods so you can debounce. So for example, when the user types,
Yeah.
you can group all what he types in 500 milliseconds.
Because
So using on change like on every keystroke,
Yeah.
that's like too fast for the computer and too fast for the network.
okay, then because I don't know how to solve that, he gave that documentation and everything, but I don't understand it properly. Then I use component should update, and I stopped.
I don't see the point why you should use component did update.
Because we earlier we did fetching and component did mount.
Yes.
So this time
But now, yeah, we cannot in
We
component
cannot do
data.
like that,
We have
like
to
that.
get this username
yeah,
and then search for the users repositories.
query.
But why not every time you press the button or something, you do the search?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why doing it in component did update? Why not like when on
Yeah,
the event?
I'm doing like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
He did with submit, but I thought he Benjamin gave how if you enter, it should shows a list, and if you click on that list, then you should show that should show repositories.
Yeah, you can still do that on the click event. You can do that.
Yeah.
So you can do almost everything as an event.
Okay.
But
I checked that with button. With button it's not that difficult, but I'm trying to do with as Benjamin gave. So there is some solution to for that, how we can do that without clicking. If we get list, and then on list, if I click someone like user, then
Yeah.
you will get repositories.
Yeah, well, also the list is just an input
Yeah.
with type drop down.
Yeah.
So you can also use on change for that.
Okay. Okay.
Because select
Yeah.
a select with options, that's a drop down. It's a select with options.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that also has an on change.
Yeah.
So when the user select different things,
Yeah.
Also,
you can also do that.
Also,
Okay.
You can do it in so many different ways.
Okay.
But it's about finding the right way and finding sort of the optimal way, so we don't really also kill the server by sending a lot of requests.
Okay. Because once we finish this, today is the last class, and we don't have any proper we know we are solving homework, but proper, like how we can do that, like how
Yeah.
we can solve that proper that
Properly, yeah.
that sometimes is like for me it's difficult.
It is.
Yeah. Because it's like he gave the demo like it should look like this, and
Yeah.
there are like, so I put that button and I check it's working properly, but with this it's difficult.
Yeah. Also, GitHub will stop you if you
Yeah,
do so many
yeah,
requests.
yeah.
So yeah,
What? Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah,
When
if
was
you
it
make
updated?
so many,
he updated that
When?
day only. Yeah,
When?
2 days back, I guess.
2
3
days.
days
Ah.
back.
that was too late.
Right?
Yeah.
That was too late.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I
that
did
was
the
too.
old one.
That was too late.
I just still need to improve.
What?
Is that called like autocomplete? So like when you search.
It is an autocomplete.
Is like-
It is an
Yeah.
autocomplete. Yes.
As you did, so it's a GitHub API where you can write the user.
Yeah,
and then
I
you get
saw
the-
that one
yeah,
also.
and then what you can do, you can get the name of the user
Yeah, I know
by
that.
clicking it,
With, like,
and then
with
put it in
arrays,
the
you get,
other API,
Yeah, I know that.
and then you get repositories.
I know how to solve with repositories, but I stuck with this like
How to
send,
complete?
like it's sending too many requests, and like I stuck with that, and that's why I'm not able to finish the homework, because I know how to do with repositories. Like
Yeah.
if I click, then there is one more request for repositories, and it will show the repositories.
Yeah.
The component should replace their.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I know that one, but like I'm not sure like we have to put that fetch request in component did update, or like,
I don't see the point of putting it. I think you should put it when the action happens.
okay.
When you change the drop down or something, or for example when you type or something like that. It should be like event driven.
Okay.
When the event happen, you should do a side effect or you should do a request.
Okay.
This is what you should
I
do.
will try if I have
Yeah.
problem. I will.
Yeah, of course you should always like question that. So we will talk about something. We were supposed to cover it last time. We'll talk about something called children,
Yeah.
not real life children. Just React children. Don't be afraid. Yeah. So if I have a div, I can give it like a hello, for example. Okay. So div is taking children. But until now, all the components that we built, they are only this type. So you can see if I will create another component, let's call it function.
Yeah.
Well, I will start with the class. Class comp1 extends react dot component render let's say it's in h1. And we can say here yes, so we just have a div and it's rendering one component one, and it's just a div, another div inside it. Does it make sense? So, for example, let's say I have value here, and value, for example, let's say hello.
Okay.
Okay, so instead of typing hello here, I will say this dot props dot value.
Okay. We will take property component one.
If I will change this to something, it will change.
Yeah.
So just taking a value and putting it. But if you see like how the DOM or how the default browser tags, they don't work this way. Most of the times you give them children like this. So you don't give value as a prop. We give it like, oh, inside. So we want to do that. We want to be able to do this. We want to be able to do this. We want to be able to treat our components like native components.
Are you recording?
Actually, no. That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, I am. Yes, I am actually recording. So, but thank you for that. Yes. Yeah. So we want to design our own component, so it will be it will take props this way. Does it make sense? Is the problem clear?
Yeah.
we are defining the children for that component.
Exactly.
within
Because
it.
like if you see anything inside, the div is taking children,
Yeah.
this div is taking it takes children, but our component never takes children.
No.
But we want them to do that.
Yeah, also in homework, to do a where we list. So it's
Yeah.
one component, but we want that component also to have
Children.
children
Children, yeah.
instead of props and
Yeah, but you want to submit the children from outside of the component.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get the
That's
idea?
what we
yeah.
So this is quite easy in React. So in React, children will be put in. So if you have like, imagine doing this. Children is equal to hello. Imagine you do this. Children could be value, could be test, could be anything. I just decided to name it children. It's just my own naming convention. So I can say here this dot props the children. Does it make sense? It's just a prop. This could be children 1 and children 1 here. It doesn't matter. It's just a name. I give it to it.
Yeah.
I can name props however I like. So if I will put this one here, it's kind of the same as naming it children in the props. So if I will remove this one, it will still work. So React will take this, what's inside, and put it in a special prop called children. Does it make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
This is the breakthrough. React will get this and put it as this prop the children. If you put 5 here, this dot prop children will be what? It will be 5, 4, sorry. I cannot differentiate between numbers anymore, but it's 4. I will keep it at 5. Okay. So it's a 5.
Uh-huh.
And if I will put, for example, if I can go crazy and put a function. So this props the children is what now?
Function.
Look what I did. I built this so I can put a function, because otherwise if I would put it like this, it will be literally, it will be
Yeah,
literally
so
like,
it's
well, that's weird, but yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so this one it will be a function, but it's not appearing here. It's not clear there. It's not appearing. Why? Because it's a function. We're not supposed to put a function on the screen. But can I call it? Can I call children?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's a function.
So you can call it. Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
It is like a bit. It's like too easy to be true.
Yeah.
You know, it is easy, but yeah. You get the idea?
Yeah.
I can pass anything. I can pass, for example, here an array. 1, 2. Of course, not like this. Yeah, I can pass an array here, like literally an array. But I can't call an array anymore. But I can say children of 1.
What if we want in component 1?
Just a second. So I can say here, like if it's 3, it will display a 3.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm passing an array here, and children I'm saying of 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Is it clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally what's here inside. It will be put in children, and you can manipulate it the same way.
What if in component 1 we have a method where we what that method does is like we click on the 4 in that div and we get the value of that children.
Again.
That was too complex for me.
No. So we have a method.
Where? We can have.
Component 1.
Yeah, we have a method here. Okay.
Yeah. And now this function app,
Yes, can call that method.
yes.
Well,
But
that's
how can I get the number 4 to use in that method?
that's something you should not do, because now you are providing, like you are calling something from down.
Yeah.
You should not do that. A child can call a parent function, but a parent should not call a child function, because that will make the parent stuck with the child.
So any way of getting that value?
You mean like this 4,
Yeah.
where you can pass it as a prop? That's what you
No,
should do.
For example, in week 4
Yeah.
homework, I'm searching for the user, and then I have the user with the picture and the name,
Yeah.
and then I have the user's repository.
Yeah.
So what I want to do now, I want to click on one repository, get that name of the repository, and then show what's inside.
But that you should do it with lifting the state up. If you move the repositories and the list inside the input, all them up, and only pass functions down, you'll be able to click and stuff, and all the state will be up. Like the same way we did with the to-do list. We had the input and the list inside the header.
Yeah.
So the input will change, we call a method from the header. The list will change, we call a method from the header. But you should never create this like hard link between components. Components should be able to communicate through methods from parent to child. You should never go the other way. It seems easy and it seems clear in the beginning, but it will like put you in a rabbit hole in the long term.
Yeah.
Because it will make so as she said before, the component will not be reusable. If you want to break this component and move it somewhere, you'll not be able to do that because it's like hard-coded to use a method from this component, which is like super bad in the context of React. As we said, components needs to be black boxes. You give them values, you give them functions, and they react to that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I can define a function here, D, and make it available from here, and hack it and get it from here, but
Yeah.
But the way you should do it is like you should pass a function here. So you can say D or T is a function, something like that, and you should call it from the child. Does it make sense, Big?
Yeah.
So this is what we got. So we understood what children means. Does it make sense? For all of you?
Yeah.
So we can do some cool tricks. So for example, here we can say a div with this dot props the children, and we can say I will just do inline styling. You remember inline styling? Just inline.
Yeah.
But in React you do it through like an object. So I would say border is 1 pixel, solid black. Does it make sense? So now I have this component called bor.
What if you have more than one children or one child?
That one would be an array. If you have, for example, this div has a border and a div. It has 2 children.
Yeah.
So it's children will not be just one item. It will be 2 items. That's it. But just remember that what you put inside, it will be converted in children. It will be inside children. If you pass a function, it's a function. If you pass an array, it's an array. If you pass 3 children, it will be 3 children there in one children object. Does it make sense? So that doesn't make any difference. So I can say hello, it's me, and I can say after that P. I can do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember capital. Is this clear? I can also make it a bit clear, so I can say color. Let's say here red. And instead of using here, I will use something like this. And I can use like
Yeah.
color. And color is just const color this dot props. And I can say blue here. It will be blue. Does it make sense? So if you have a component that it's like concerned with styling, you can do the same thing here. let's say you have a component that like do layouts and like items in a specific way, you can do it.
Can two siblings, if there is two siblings or three siblings, can I get data from one siblings and put another? Like suppose in a div, if we have a one paragraph and another two paragraphs, can I get
You mean like this?
maybe one input and one paragraph? So I want to.
You mean like this? But you want to like remove the P and keep the hello or something like that?
No, in div, I want one input and one paragraph. Okay.
Like just a second. Like just let me reproduce the example. Like you
Yeah.
mean like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to take a value from the input and put in a paragraph. So how the two like siblings work? Can I do that?
You mean like, well, you can, that's a bit cryptic because even like from the point where you can like explain it is a bit cryptic, but you can technically. So if you console.log this one here, this, so we can also take children as a prop. So we don't need to do this. We can just take children here. Make sense? So if we console log children, we will see it's hello. After that, it's an object. After that, it's an empty string. After that is an object. Does it make sense? So hello is this one.
Yeah.
Object is this one because P is an object. As we said, it's a React element with type equal P. After that, we have an empty string. If we do this, for example, we have only 3 now. There's no empty. And the third one is an input.
Yeah. But for the paragraph, it should show as a child having hello.
No, it should show as an object because P is not text. P is in the context of React. P is an
JSX
object. It's a JSX object.
Yeah.
It's not text. Hello is text, but P is not.
Okay.
So you can take the first object or the second object, do something to it, attach props to it, remove props to it, up to you. That will make the application a bit weird because people will see an input, but in input suddenly it's like having more stuff or less stuff. That's not clear, but you can do that. You can see it, it's an array. You can remove, like you can do whatever you like. You can slice it, map over it, I don't know. So you can do any operation to children.
And also in the object input,
Yeah,
there is refs.
yeah,
Till now we was using to get the value from event.
yeah.
But what about this ref?
Well, this ref is really more like it's larger than just the input. We didn't really discuss refs, but refs are the way to actually. So until now we have been like doing some stuff, and React will print the result of our manipulation into the DOM, into the real browser. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
What about if you want to get a real element from the DOM? If you want to get real P or the real input. An example of that could be, so let's say here, so the way you do it is, so you said const x, or we don't need to do that, but we can say test or ref equal react dot create ref. You just call it like this. Does it make sense? And now you go to, for example, to the div, and you say ref is equal to ref. Yeah, this dot ref, sorry. What's the purpose of this? It doesn't change anything. Yes. If we console log, let's say in I will do it in a life cycle, that would be better. So component did mount. I will console log this dot ref. And I will just just want to open this. Yeah, it's this one. This. So if we do this, So my ref, it's an object with the current. So I can say this.ref.current. And current is literally the div. So if you create ref and say ref equal this.ref inside the component, could be an input, could be a div, could be anything. You'll be able after that to say this.ref.current and you will get access to that. So if it's an input, let's say we put an input here.
That goes down to
I just don't want to move the logic of the ref to here. And we say ref here. So now it's an input. I can literally say component this.ref.value. It's empty, but for example, if I will say default value, default value is here. So for you can have a click listener, or you can have a submit button or something, and that submit button doesn't need to like put the input value inside the state. You can just say, oh, this.ref.current.value. Get the current input and get its value if you want to, but that's not really good practice. You should not do that. Like no one uses that. It's a bit sort of illegal to do that in the React code. You should only use refs if it's like extremely kind of something that you cannot do with React. To the point where you want to, you need to reach to a specific DOM element so you can manipulate it. But in real life, you should never do that. It's like 99% you should not do that. You should not use refs. But does it make sense?
Yeah.
So ref are a way to access like a real DOM element, not like a P, like an object, or like no. You want to get like a real P on the browser, and delete stuff from it, or get its value, or change its value, like imperatively, like you do. You can literally here say current.add event listener. You can do that. You can see how it can get really dangerous. You start mixing React with like non-React code. Does it make sense? So this is sort of a forbidden feature unless you really can justify its use.
So if you know worry too much about it.
No, unless like you really like, you will need it when you will need it.
Yeah.
You will see that you can do it with React kind of. It's like 90% of the time you will not. Does it explain a bit of ref?
yeah.
So if we get back to our example, is this clear? Cool. So let's create another component, and for example, let's call this component fetcher, for example. So this component, it's like a like bordered component. It's reusable, so I can just give it a URL and it will give me the data. Let's create a reusable component that does that, which is kind of useful. So I will create a class component. And it will extend React.component. It will say render. And it will just return now this. Does it make sense? We will hide this, or we can just keep it. So here we will render a component called, let's name it fetcher, for example. Make sense? And I will just give it 5 here, for example. Yeah, children. Clear? This is a simple component. So what I really want to do with this component is like this component, you will give it a URL. It will go and do the API call for you and give you the result. So if you want to do an API call, you don't need it to actually like do that every time again and again and again. You can just like build a component and that will do that for you. Make sense? it's a bit weird, but you will see. So let's say you give it a URL, and now let's just like copy a random URL. So API/github/com/users. I don't know if that. Let's just bring
Yeah,
mine.
and then rebels.
I think that's enough. So let's say like we give it URL like this one. I like to name stuff here like URL equal,
Yeah.
and we give it the URL here. It's not doing anything with it, but
Yeah.
this is the idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I will go to this component. I will initialize state because I need to fetch stuff.
Yeah.
I will say data.
It's equal with empty array.
Well, we don't know even if it's an array. Let's just call it with endify.
One.
Because maybe someone wants to fetch an object. Maybe this is an object. Maybe someone wants to fetch an array. Usually I know that it's an empty array. I know that I'm fetching a list. So I put it as an empty array. But now I don't know. Does it make sense? We don't know. So let's call it as an endify. And let's say loading. Let's go a bit like in a better way. Let's say request state. Well, I think we can just go with loading. Loading, it's false. Does it make sense? We can say component did mount. What are we gonna do in component did mount? We will fetch the stuff. How are we gonna do that? We'll just use the fetch function. What to fetch?
URL.
From where I can get the URL?
Mm-mm.
From where I can get
From the
From
const,
props.
from props.
from props. So this dot props dot URL because it's here. It's passing here, so I can get it here. Then
Resolve.
response. Just call it resp. Dot JSON.
JSON.
Make sense? Dot then
Data. And set the state with data.
and this dot set state. Data.
Yes, no.
Data. And data. So we can just do this.
Yeah? Why?
If you have the same key, you can just omit that.
Ah,
You remember that?
yeah.
Make sense? But now we need to say catch, catch,
Error.
catch, this dot set state, error, true, and yeah, just error true, loading false. So instead of like manipulating loading and error, let's just create one value and call it request state. I think it's a good name. Request state. And it will be loading. And here it will be done.
Ah, yeah. So we pass it.
And here it will be error. Does it make sense?
So we are naming the response. Yeah, request state.
It's just like instead of like having a loading boolean and having an error boolean and I was like I will just have one string that represents different values. So it's loading, after that it's done. So it's loading, after that it's either done or error.
Because
Like a
we
promise,
only
it's
want-
either done or catch because it's just, we just need one value. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Here we can console.log this dot state, all the state. And we go here. We have undefined, loading, and we have data. But I want to consume this. I want to show something. I need to show an UI. Maybe I want to show the username. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So here, I want to be able to say oh, I want to show like username or something, or data.username, something like that. But I can't really do that because it's inside the component. How I'm able to, how I'm gonna like do that? So I showed you a trick before that we can use functions. So we can do that. So here, instead of passing regular strings and regular values, we can pass a function. Okay? So it's a function. Let's just call it, let's just this return hello.
Can you guys see it from here? Yeah.
Everybody said
Yeah,
yes.
that is
We can increase more. So we have here a function. Does it make sense? We pass the function to the component as children. We are all on the same page?
Yeah.
Cool. So just refresh. Functions are not valid as React child. As a React child, this may happen if you return a component instead of. So it's, React is complaining that we are rendering a function because this is a function, and I'm returning a child here. It's like, what am I gonna do with this function? So we should call it.
Yeah.
When we call it, React will stop complaining. Does it make sense? Here we can do a really awesome trick. We can pass this dot state here. And we can receive it here. So instead of, so here, I will do this. So I will receive here values, let's say, or a request. I will say console.log request and just return dummy hello world. Is it clear what's happening here? We have an array, we have an object here. This is just to say that, oh, we want to start a function. It's JSX. It's not normal HTML. Because remember, if we do this, what will happen? It will break because this is not valid JavaScript. But instead we do that. So now we are saying to React, I want to pass a function as a child. Does it make sense? It's a function as a child. And inside the body, I'm saying just console.log request, and I'm just returning hello world. Is it clear?
Who doesn't get it?
I can see like some confusion, but like people are like, it is kind of clear.
To be more specific, we can say that this is state with what would be that? See the
Yeah.
state the data, so we can get the data from the data.
Precisely.
And then we can say
So literally,
name or whatever.
so we got like a function as a child from the parent. So we can see the parent here. It's giving this fetcher a function. Okay? And we are using this children and we are passing it something. So we can pass this function, for example, hello,
Into the function.
into the function. And here, this will be what?
Hello.
It will be hello. If we pass 1, 2, this request will be 1, and we can add another one, it will be 2. Does it make sense? Does it? Or
Yeah, definitely.
for everyone. I can see you are confused.
Yeah, like, is this like the only way we can fetch data? Or?
No, this is the
easy way.
yeah. No, making a component reuseful.
Yeah, reusable.
Reusable.
The idea is that we did a ton of data fetching before. But we did a lot of data. Now we are trying to get introduced to the concept of how we can compose components, how we can actually share logic, how we can have stateful logic between components. So instead of repeating myself every time I need to fetch data, I want to create one component, like one usable function. You get the idea? So this complexity is just like to kind of, so let's say we have a component C1, okay? And C1, and we have C2, or this one we call it F, which is just the fetcher, kind of. So we can say F is just a component. I can pass a function here. So I can pass a function. This is a function. Does it make sense? Inside F, there is a render. So we can say render. Okay? I can say return. This, I can just say children. It's like imagine like this dot calls for children. What does this children refers to? It refers to this. So if I would call children, I'm calling this function. And when I call this function, can I give it some parameters? Can I give it like 1 or 2 or something? And that parameter will be received what? In this way. Or we can call it like P. And I can just console with both P. Does it make sense?
And also we can receive some other parts which we can do.
You can
Yeah.
give it you can give it a list of stuff here.
Yeah, but from components. that
I
are
did
components.
there's we can do that, but there's some issues with that.
Yeah.
So you should only use here what's passed here.
Yeah.
You will get into troubles that like I once we spent like 10 days in the company with a bug that we didn't figure out just because of this. Because we were using something from outside and this was controlled by this. That was a mess. So favor using or just what's passed inside here. For smaller examples we can maybe do that, but as a production code don't do that. Because you will make this link to that big component, and also rendering is controlled by this, so this can re-render it, and then it is a mess. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So what we did here is like we have data fetching, we have some code for data fetching, and we have state. If you can follow me please. State has like request state, if it's loading, if it's done, if it's something, just an indicator, like or like if you have like traffic light, if it's red, if it's green, something like that. And you have data. So when you fetch state and you're done, you put the data here, and after that you give the data to this function. And when you give the data to this function, what happens? You can receive it here. And you can do whatever you like here.
And if I want to return something from that,
Yeah, you return.
What you will return here,
It will
it will be the result of this,
Yeah.
it will be the result of this.
and then you will display.
This is why I'm returning hello world and it's displaying hello world. So it's just functions, we are just passing functions. It seems a bit complex, but it's not, it's just we are passing functions. And why we are doing that? Because we have the stateful logic, we have like a handful of logic, which is data fetching. It's really repetitive. We put it inside a component. So data fetching is the same all the time. But how we display it is not the same. You can like, how you fetch a message, how you fetch a profile, how you fetch X, how you fetch Y is the same. But how you display each one is not the same. So we create a function that does the same thing, and it gives us control back to do what's not the same. Does it kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Why we are doing that? Of course, it's not that obvious because we're just starting that. No one is supposed to. But this is really important. Like render, it's called render props. Means like you don't render what you usually you return what you render here. Now you are like returning, or like you are passing what you render as a prop. So children is controlling. So if your children will return 5 here, if we return 5 here, let's just like make it clean a bit now. we return here something, let's say hello. So children, when we call it, it will return what? This is the function, it will return hello. So the result of this call or invocation, it will be what? It will be hello. So this component will display what? Hello. But from outside, we decided what the component should render from outside. Usually we don't do that. Usually every component returns stuff inside. But now from outside we are controlling what should the component render. Does it make sense? This is the difference that we are like facing now. Cool? We are on the same page? So, if you can follow me, can. So we have request, and request is this dot state here. So what we're gonna do is that we will pass here data. We will not just pass data. We will pass an object. We will say loading, or yeah, if it's loading, means request state equal loading. Is it true? It's loading if request state is equal loading. True. And we have data. And data is what? Is this dot state dot data. Is it clear? But we have the same shape as state here. So there is no point in constructing custom object. So instead we can just say this dot state. And we can move the if state equal loading and stuff inside the consumer.
Secondly, we are skipping one step, writing more code.
Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So what does state refers to here? What does request refers to here? Okay, so it's the values inside the state.
Yeah.
Cool. So you can see, first is undefined, and after that it's data. And we have request state loading, request state done. If we, not sure if that will be handled. Yeah, that's not handled because we need to handle it ourselves, but yeah. So yeah, we.
Yeah, but it's like in the input box when we are typing every time, like if
We
are
do a
typing,
request
we
every
do
time. Yeah, it's different. Yes.
it's different. Because I tried with like submit things, then it like there is a username,
Yeah.
hit submit, then only once it fetch data and like it's
Yeah.
easy.
You should just do it on the on change.
Okay.
Make sense? What we are doing here?
Yeah.
So instead of returning a dummy hello world here, we can return something meaningful. So let's say if request dot, or let's say data. Naming is really hard.
Yeah.
Dot request state equal loading. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We say return, it's loading. Else, if it's not loading, probably we have the data, like
Yeah.
95%. So what we can return is, let's say for example, avatar. Let's build an avatar component. Let's just use a function. It's stateless. We don't need state. We don't need lifecycle. Avatar. What does it return? We're not sure about that yet. But let's just return a 4 or something here. And we have props. So if we go to the data here, let's just bring the console back. In the data, we have login, we have name. So let's use name. Let's say name equal request the data dot name. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And here we can just destructure it and say name. Make sense? You're following with me?
Yeah.
And we can just say a div here. Let's do it with the H1. So we have, it's loading, it's like a bit fast, but does it make sense? Cool. Let's just display the, maybe the avatar URL. I think it's the URL. Nope. Yes, it's my picture. Ooh. So if we say avatar URL, what's happening here? Oh, that's just the code from my company. We can put an image here with a source. We can say source, or avatar. Just name it source. We are already inside the avatar component. There is no point in repeating the name. So here we can say source equal request the data with avatar URL. Yeah. Is it clear? Yes, because we passed state here.
Yeah.
And state is data and request state.
Yeah. I understand that. I'm just saying the loading, you know, we initialize it as loading, but it's done. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's done here and there is
yeah.
error.
Okay, yeah, that's where it's initialized.
In the then and the catch. Okay, I will not look at you again. Doesn't make sense. Any question? But you get the flow of what you are
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course you're not supposed to like master this when like the first time you see it. Everybody like passes by like that confusion moment. But it's really about trying and going home and like experimenting with that to be able to actually get it clear inside your head. So no one can really explain to you in a perfect way. It's a matter of like practicing, so you can get the habit and just like, it becomes more clear to you.
So we can use this method for any URL we want to fetch.
You can use it. So for example, let's say you need a counter in your app. You don't need to put a counter state and a counter update or increment in every component. You can just put it as a component and pass a function to it, and you will receive the counter value and the update. And from outside, you can control that. Does it make sense? So, for example, we can use this fetcher again here. Yeah, and just pass a different URL. So this time let's use a Pokemon API. So we can just say this, and after that the Pokemon suffix. And now we can just put it here. And we can pass a function again. Make sense? And we can say console.log date request. Just name it request. Just put it here. And if you go here, yeah, of course. We need to return something. Just return. No, that will not return anything.
Doesn't boolean console.
No, but you need to return something.
Yeah,
Because we're calling children and returning that. You need to return something. String, null, something. Because that function invocation will be here. So it needs to return something. So now I will just comment this one. Now I have data and I have the Pokemon data. Is it clear?
Yeah.
So you can see this pattern how it's used in so many like kind of forms and shapes to actually reuse code. No questions? I don't really think so. I don't think so. Yeah, it's like, what's that? This confusion moment. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine to have that.
but with on change, it will fetch again and again, right? We changing input.
Yeah.
I will try.
Yeah, of course.
And how to limit like
Number of users.
a number of users, like because I'm trying to put like on API like limit 30 or something, limit 20 as by default it gives 30 users,
Yeah.
and how we can limit that.
Just check the API documentation. They should have like a key pass or something. Depends from
Or-
API.
Or
the
you
limit
use a
rate
method
they have.
in either in an array of users.
Yeah, you can also do that. You can either do it from the API side.
10 users.
Yeah, you can, as he said, you can do it from the API side or fetch this stuff.
Yeah.
And when you get it, you can take the first 20.
Yeah.
Just slice or something.
Or just
Yeah,
duplicate it.
Yeah, I don't know, something
Yeah,
like
but
that.
still it loads a lot of data. Sometimes it's
So you use the so check the documentation of the API, and then like for example you have queue to search, so they should have limit and skip, so we do pagination.
Yeah.
So that's like an API thing.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
never about React or something. That's like an API thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is setting pagination.
But it's never
Yeah.
like it's over
And then
reused.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you can pass it to an attribute like
It's
the
reused,
graph,
yeah.
like of the
I took that view, but it just need to. Yes,
If I'm not wrong, you have kind of limit when you are querying from APIs. But this, for instance, when you are querying repositories, you can limit, for instance, for 5. But I don't know how to do it with the.
Yeah, you need to check the documentation.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
The, only the doc.
when you put the documentation, I'm trying to search in that like how this, but then it's like only for the rate limit or something.
Yeah.
But not properly limit the
Yeah.
users. I will find.
Yeah. You spend you will probably spend half of your time as a front ender working and checking APIs. Oh, the back ender doesn't provide this. Oh, how to do this? You ask him and he's like, oh, pass this query. Oh, but it doesn't work if I have this. So exactly, that import is again, and that import doesn't return the name. It only returns the last name. So it's a natural fit.
Giving and getting between from and
Yeah, exactly. You'll spend like half of your time just fighting over that. Can you please give me this attribute in the same endpoint? So, or just use something like yeah. It's no questions.
But just I want to mention something one of future.
Can you use the charger?
Online.
Yeah.
He went for the review. They asked him similar.
Yeah, I actually I got
I
the
tried with 2-3 years.
I got this in my last job interview actually. I got like render prop stuff in my.
Yeah.
It's a famous pattern. So
They will ask you to fetch data and render it
Okay.
in different ways.
yeah.
Yeah.
For me, they like specifically asked if I can do it with render props.
Yeah.
So,
Or
With
you
this
just
method.
hard code it.
kind of, yeah. Not really like
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah.
just like you get the idea. You can give a function to a component, so it customize the return of the component.
Yeah. That's what.
Are you sure, everyone? Like, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Cool. So now, let's try and discuss context API. Okay. So I will just use Code Sandbox.
Check it in your Slack.
That was very, no?
Yeah.
I'll do that.
It didn't work.
Can you follow with me?
Yeah.
I think he went. Damn it. Yeah.
We need to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Like here in the component structure, you can write as a
we did that earlier in the promises. I know that they run, but I don't know how it's not working.
So yeah, if we can just let's discuss.
If I have a problem, I will just ping you guys.
Yeah,
But I have
definitely.
to finish that one.
Yeah, definitely. So let's try and talk about context now.
Yeah.
So we described the idea behind context. Let's try to do it now. So there is like 3 pieces into a context. 3 pieces of like information you need to get and retain. If you get that, you'll be able to work with it. The first one is constructing context. You create a context. The second one is exposing the context. The third one is consuming the data from the context. We will do each one of them separately. So the first one, which is creating a context, how are we gonna do that? So React gives you a method to create a context. So you can say const ctx, I'll just name it ctx, equal react.create context. That's creating context. As easy as that.
Yeah.
And context is the object that has like 2 keys. One called provider, damn it, and one called consumer. You can see they are capital letters. Components,
Yeah.
capital. You cannot have components without capital. That's really important. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Provider, consumer. What's the role of them? It's kind of clear. Provider is the second piece, consumer is the third piece. Provider is like when you want to provide the informations, and consumer is when you want to consume the information. Let's try and do that. So let's build sort of like a theme kind of feature like we did before. And yeah, by the way, in the consumer you can in the create context you can pass a custom value. So you decide what's the value inside your customer. Could be an object, could be an array, could be a string, could be a counter. Up to you.
Function?
It's JavaScript values.
Oh.
So and functions are first class citizens, so you can do that. So we will use a string. I can also use an object and use value as string. We can just go as easy as a string. We don't care. Okay, and let's start with light. And we have up here. I'll just give up. What just happened?
Oh.
No, don't worry. So I will just import the CSS file there. Import style CSS.
Stats.
Cool. I will just say here width is 100% and height is 100%. And if we say background something, background red. So let's say it's 100 VW. Yeah, this is much better. And I will just remove the. You remember CSS? You didn't do that for a long time. So let's say margin 0 and padding it's 0. Yes. We still have this weird spacing in the top. Damn it. Must be something like that, yes. We lost it. Damn it. Ah, that is super annoying. We have up. I'll just go through it again. We said it's yeah, no, you said the width is 100% and height VH and background, just to double check, red.
We have to import that.
We didn't import it, of course, because we lost everything. Styles.css, and it's relative.
Yeah.
So we need to do this. Make sense? And we just say body and HTML, both of them. We say it's padding 0 and margin 0. Yes, we don't care about that spacing in the top. No one cares. So, if we do this, we can open this one here, and we can just close this. No, damn it. Yeah. Cool. Now we know it's big enough, so we don't need this background red. So now, inside the app, we will use inline styling, or we can also use a custom class. I would say it's better to use a custom class. So if we say .light, we say it's background white, okay, and .dark, we say it's background, we say blue. Make sense? And this is 2 CSS classes. Sorry for the colors and the design. It's a disaster, but yeah. Clear until now. So the first thing I'm gonna do is provide the informations. And the way we provide the informations is using a provider. And from where to get the provider is from the context. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna do this now. I'm gonna do provider, consumer. That's easier to do. And to provide the informations, we just go and do it somewhere. So we can say here, does it make sense? And we can say value. So the value that you give it here, it will override the context value. So this is a default value. If you give it light here, so if you don't give it any value here, it will use the default value that you pass here.
Okay.
But in this case, we are giving a value here, so we don't need really that. So now if I have a, so let's say I will create here a switch. Okay, I have a switch component. Let's say I'll just create a new file here. No, not rename, new file. And we call it switch.js. Remember JSX? You can also use JSX, up to you. And here I would just say export default function switch import React from React. I'll just return 5 here. We will go back to it and fill it with the needful things. And here we say import switch we have the 4 here and we will be able to see it here. And one other thing I will do, I will extract the context into a separate file. That will be, so let's say context.js. So I will move this context here. That will be like more real life. It's like import React from React.
Does it matter with small c?
What do you mean?
Context.js.
I would say it's smaller because it's more of like utility. It's exporting a headphone component, but it's created by, yeah. But you can also give, I would say just a matter of style. So we can say export these two, provider and consumer. Makes sense. So now from here we can just import provider from context. Back. And from the switcher, which is the consumer, I will import the consumer. So I will say import from context. I will import the consumer. So here I can say like this. I render the consumer like this. But I want to consume the value, which is light or dark or like, because we put light, but maybe we will change it in the future. How will we consume that? Well, the same way we did it. You will pass a function. This is why like it's everywhere. So you can pass a function here. And like fetcher, we called it. Remember when we did that? So context will call you with the value. So we can say here value. So context will give you the value back. Why? When you give it a function.
And the value is whatever we pass on the blocks to our switch.
Yes, precisely. So it's like context is like sharing values with all components. So now we can just say return, well, we don't need to say return, but we can just say console.log. Console.log value and return value. It's showing light here. If we put here test, it shows test.
So it's the provider that provides the information.
Exactly, and the consumer is consuming the information.
So within that provider, we can pass in our style CSS class or whatever.
We can pass even a function here. It's up to us. But what I'm gonna do is I will build a custom provider. So here I will not export this provider. I will build the class. We don't have so much time left, but we can continue after. But I'm gonna start with provider, or we call it theme provider. Extends React.component. That's clear. Okay. We have a render. We just return null now. And I will just move this up. copy this, put it here. So this provider will hold a theme and we'll have a function to change the theme. So we have like state equal, so it's like theme. We will just say it's light. Okay, and we have update theme. It will take a theme and it will say this dot set state. What?
Theme.
Should that be our function? Update theme?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. to bind
So we don't
yeah,
bind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do that. Let's stop here and backtrack and go back again. What did we do? We've created a context. What's the purpose of a context? To pass the data across all our application without using props explicitly.
What if we want to get something from state?
Yes, we will pass now our state as a context.
Yeah.
We will do that. But let's just go back. So that's the role of a context. We create the context here, and the context give us a provider and a consumer. Provider, you put it in the top level to provide some information, and we are doing that here. So now everything inside here can access that information, including this component called switch. So switch is using the consumer, it's using render props, function as a child, call it however you like, and it's taking the value. And this value here is the same thing to what's passed here. And it's using address console login and return it.
And that provider is declared at the highest level.
Yeah.
Component, yeah.
Does it make sense?
And if you want to use another context, you
You-
don't have to create it, you just
No,
make
actually,
it consumer to something else. Yeah?
you like for everything you want to share, you create a different. So for example, you can put everything in one context, but you can also like have different contexts for everything. So you can have like user context, to-do list context, messages context, or you can have one context with all. It really depends on how complex is your app.
Yeah.
But for now, one context is more than enough.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Let's continue after the break.
We get it now.